The Sandcastle Self, Building Confidence That Lasts. Introduction. We all crave it, don't we? That profound sense of adequacy, of inherent capability, of inner peace. It's a subtle resonance beneath the surface of our existence, a deep-seated longing for unshakable self-assurance. Consider this. Have you ever found yourself lost in the endless scroll of online imagery, a sharp pang of comparison piercing through you? Or perhaps hours have been consumed by the agonizing deliberation over an outfit for a gathering, a fervent belief that your outward presentation is the sole currency of acceptance? Maybe a compliment has ignited a fleeting effervescence, only to dissipate the instant the speaker turns away, leaving you to question if it was merely a fortunate accident. We are often handed a blueprint: secure the coveted position, sculpt the ideal physique, find the perfect companion, or amass a dazzling array of accomplishments. It's as if we're presented with a conditional manifesto: achieve X, and genuine confidence will finally be yours. But what becomes of us when these very pillars inevitably falter or vanish? This contemplation leads me to the evocative metaphor of the sandcastle. Envision yourself on a sun-drenched expanse of beach, the warmth a caress upon your skin. The impulse strikes to erect a magnificent sandcastle. With meticulous care, you sculpt the crenellations, excavate the protective moat, and adorn its ramparts with delicate shells. In that singular moment, it appears imposing, even resolute. A swell of pride washes over you. Yet, a quiet understanding persists within. This exquisite edifice is founded upon the ephemeral, mere grains of sand. It lies utterly at the mercy of the wind's caprice, the tide's relentless advance, and the careless tread of a passing foot. This is precisely the precarious state of our confidence when it is anchored to external validation. Our physical presentation, for instance. We may dedicate ourselves to achieving a particular aesthetic or body mass, and for a time, this pursuit yields a gratifying sensation. However, our bodies are in constant flux, yielding to the passage of years, the intrusion of illness, or the natural ebb and flow of life's currents. Relationships, too, are akin to the tide. They can be a source of profound joy and unwavering support, yet they are also subject to shifts, endings, or the complexities that inevitably arise. The affirmation we glean from a partner or friends is invaluable, but it is also a wave that can recede, leaving us feeling vulnerable and exposed. Even achievements and possessions, the very things for which we strive with such earnestness, are susceptible to loss. When our sense of self-worth is inextricably bound to these mutable elements, we are condemned to an emotional tempest, perpetually anxious about the next surge that might obliterate our painstakingly constructed sandcastle. It is an existence of profound exhaustion, is it not? To rely on these shifting sands for our confidence is akin to attempting to cup water in a sieve. But what if an alternative path existed? A method for constructing something impervious to the tides, something that endures even as the external landscape transforms? This is the profound promise of what I term internal confidence. It is not a guise of arrogance, nor a delusion of superiority. Rather, it is a deep, quiet certainty residing within, a knowing that you are intrinsically valuable and capable, irrespective of the circumstances that surround you. Conceive of it as building your confidence upon bedrock, not merely loose sand. Internal confidence is an embrace of the self, acknowledging all imperfections. It is a cultivation of trust in your own discernment, a recognition of the innate resilience to navigate whatever challenges life may present. It is the practice of living authentically, guided by your own deeply held values. When this inner foundation is firmly established, you can weather any storm without your self-worth eroding. This book is intended to be your steadfast companion on this transformative journey. Together, we shall meticulously identify the sandcastle elements that anchor your life and gently release their hold. More significantly, we will unearth practical, unvarnished strategies for cultivating a robust, unyielding core of internal confidence. This is not an endeavor of superficial fixes or fleeting improvements. It is a pursuit of a more profound, enduring self-assurance that will serve as your unwavering compass through every season of life. In unison, we can extricate ourselves from the ever-shifting shoreline and commence the construction of something truly indelible, something that originates from the very core of your being. Are you poised to embark? Chapter 1. Understanding Self-Perception. 1. The Mirror of Attractiveness. We often find ourselves before a mirror, a familiar ritual of a fleeting glance or a more scrutinizing appraisal before venturing forth. This reflective surface, however, can transform into a most capricious arbiter. It presents our physical being, our skin, our hair, the contours of our frame. And for so many, this reflection becomes the primary metric by which we gauge our adequacy. We scrutinize ourselves, posing questions: am I attractive? Am I sufficiently slender? Do I conform to the expected visage? This notion of attractiveness, however, resembles a desert mirage. It appears tangible, possesses an alluring importance, yet dissolves upon attempted grasp. What one individual deems comely, another may not even register. Consider, the styles that once held sway now strike us as peculiar. The features lauded in one culture are distinct in another. Beauty is not a fixed, immutable entity. It is a distillation of societal dictates, media portrayals, and the echoes of our own past experiences, all converging to define desirability at a given juncture. It is sculpted by trends, by the ceaseless influx from magazines, screens, and scrolling feeds. It is a perpetually elusive target. To anchor our self-worth to something so ephemeral, so beholden to fleeting opinion or prevailing fashion, is akin to constructing a domicile upon shifting sands. Its collapse is inevitable. Herein lies the mirror's deceptive role. It offers only the superficial, the outward shell. Yet, we frequently transmute this reflected image into a judgment of our intrinsic value. We hunt for imperfections: a nascent wrinkle, a subtle curve, a patch of skin that deviates from an imagined ideal. And then, we permit these perceived flaws to declare our unworthiness. It is as if our internal monologue, ostensibly our confidant, begins to murmur criticisms born of the mirror's pronouncements. This phenomenon can afflict even those whom others might deem exceptionally attractive. They, too, may fixate on a singular detail they dislike, allowing it to eclipse their entire being. They may dedicate considerable energy to concealing or rectifying this singular perceived blemish, rather than embracing the totality of who they are. I recall a moment, not long ago, when preparing for a social gathering. I stood before the glass, and my vision was consumed by perceived deficiencies. My hair felt disheveled, my attire lacked the anticipated perfection, and I was convinced I appeared fatigued. My mind spiraled into a cacophony of self-recrimination, predicting social ostracism, a failure to integrate, an inevitability that my flaws would be noted. So consumed was I by my outward presentation that I nearly abstained from attending. It was a quintessential manifestation of my inner insecurities projecting themselves onto my external guise. My focus on superficial minutiae had eclipsed my awareness of my inner self. I overlooked my wit, my empathy, my capacity for attentive listening. All these qualities were invisible to the mirror and, in my estimation, invisible to all others as well. My confidence, or rather my deficit thereof, was predicated entirely on this visual assessment, and it was a foundation of profound instability. This unceasing preoccupation with our appearance can ensnare us in a demoralizing cycle. We seek affirmations, digital accolades, or any subtle indication of external approval regarding our looks. Such validation bestows a transient surge of confidence, a fleeting warmth akin to sunlight on a sandcastle. Yet, the instant this affirmation recedes, or when we encounter a reflection we deem unfavorable, our confidence can plummet with equal rapidity. We become tethered to these external endorsements. If we perceive ourselves as attractive, we may feel more gregarious, more competent. But should we awaken one morning with a diminished sense of allure, the world can suddenly feel more arduous. We might retreat from social engagements, harbor doubts about our capabilities, or succumb to a pervasive melancholy. This dependency is the very essence of the Sandcastle analogy. The ebb and flow of public opinion or our own mercurial self-perception can obliterate it in an instant. Consider the pressure we endured to maintain a specific aesthetic, the relentless pursuit of restrictive diets, the arduous hours dedicated to physical exertion, the gnawing anxiety surrounding the passage of time, weight fluctuations, or cutaneous alterations. These are all external pressures, components of the shifting sands. Our bodies are subject to natural evolution. We age, our metabolic rates decelerate, our skin loses some of its suppleness. Illness can impact our outward mien. Accidents can leave indelible marks. If our self-assurance is inextricably linked to a particular physique or an unblemished complexion, what becomes of it when these natural, or sometimes unavoidable, transformations occur? Our sandcastle of confidence is then eroded. It is not our robust edifice. It is vulnerable to every errant breeze and every successive wave of change. This, precisely, is why our central thesis, the divergence between a sandcastle self and an intrinsic, enduring confidence, holds such profound significance. Physical appearance constitutes but a single element of the sandcastle. It may be a visually appealing, even striking, component of the structure, but it is fashioned from the same fragile material as the remainder. It is susceptible to the elements. It is transient. To ground our self-worth in our appearance is to erect our entire dwelling upon the seashore. It may offer temporary delight, but it is not engineered to withstand the tempests or the shifting tides of existence. The pertinent question, then, becomes, what are the underlying motivations that compel us to cling so tenaciously to the belief that our attractiveness dictates our worth even when we intellectually acknowledge its fallacy? Often, this is rooted in formative experiences. Perhaps as children, we garnered greater commendation when presenting a particular appearance. We may have encountered rejection or felt overlooked, leading us to the erroneous conclusion that our perceived unattractiveness was the cause. These early imprints, whether articulated or implied, can deeply engrave our self-perceptions. They can foster a profound apprehension that a lack of physical appeal equates to a lack of inherent value. We may have come to associate physical perfection with acceptance and affection, rendering anything less a personal failing. This engenders a potent internal narrative, formidable to dismantle, even when logic intervenes. We might intellectually grasp the subjectivity of beauty, yet emotionally, we still recoil from failing to meet an internal, frequently unattainable standard. And what of the genuine toll exacted by perpetually existing under the scrutiny of this critical mirror? It is immense. The sheer anxiety can be debilitating. The preoccupation with our appearance can consume vast reserves of mental energy, energy that could be channeled into more enriching pursuits. We may shy away from novel experiences, from forging new connections, or from seizing opportunities, fearing we will not present ourselves favorably. Imagine the myriad potential relationships left uncultivated, the laughter suppressed, the audacious ideas unvoiced, all due to apprehension over a perceived imperfection in our reflection. It is akin to willingly diminishing one's own luminescence. This incessant self-assessment can also foster a sense of isolation, even amidst company, as we perceive a fundamental chasm between our inner selves and the external image we believe we project. We remain so tethered to the superficial that we forfeit the opportunity for genuine, profound connections, those forged through shared experiences, shared values, and mutual understanding rather than mere physical attributes. The true undertaking, therefore, lies in learning to recalibrate our gaze. How do we divert our attention from the superficial reflection and begin to regard ourselves with a more compassionate, truthful, and internally focused perspective? This is a deliberate choice, and one that is not always facile, particularly when society incessantly bombards us with messages pertaining to appearance. It commences with the recognition that the mirror does not hold ultimate authority over our worth. We must begin to challenge those automatic, critical thoughts that surface upon self-observation. Instead of immediately fixating on what is wrong, we can endeavor to pause. We can pose the question, what else is true about me? We can initiate by acknowledging our other attributes. Are you a perceptive listener? Do you possess a strong moral compass? Are you endowed with creativity? Do you extend compassion to others? These are all facets of your value that remain invisible to the mirror. This is not an exhortation to disregard our physical selves or to feign indifference to appearance. It is a matter of reordering our priorities. It is about comprehending that while our appearance is an integral component of our being, it is not the defining one. It is akin to admiring a magnificent, intricately sculpted artwork. The texture of its surface and the precision of its form are significant, yet the true value of the sculpture emanates from the artist's mastery, the underlying intention, and the narrative it conveys. Our physical form is but one dimension of the resplendent, intricate sculpture that is you. But the genuine artistry, the enduring worth, resides within the substance. The subsequent phase involves an exploration of how our internal narratives, frequently shaped by these very external mirrors, further complicate our trajectory toward authentic self-assurance. While the mirror may reflect the transient beauty of the present instant, genuine self-acceptance is found not in the pursuit of its fleeting image, but in the comprehension of the enduring substance that lies beneath. 2. Inside out. Confidence from within. We so often cast our gaze outward, seeking external validation, a testament to our perceived adequacy. Our sense of self is built upon foundations as ephemeral as sandcastles, perched precariously at the ocean's edge. One moment, they stand magnificent, seemingly indomitable. The next, a capricious wave crashes, and they dissolve, leaving behind only a damp imprint and a gnawing sense of loss. This is the precarious state of confidence tethered to externals, our appearance, our financial standing, our professional titles, even the esteem of others. Consider the fleeting elation of a Monday compliment on one's attire, only to have that luminescence extinguished by a Tuesday critique or a simple dip in perceived attractiveness. Or perhaps a period of blissful contentment in a relationship, shattered by a minor disagreement, leaving one's sense of worth in tatters. This perpetual oscillation, this ebb and flow of self-regard dictated by external circumstances, is profoundly draining. It is akin to surrendering oneself to the whims of the tide, perpetually scanning the horizon for the next surge of affirmation or bracing for the inevitable undertow of criticism. This reliance on external moorings renders our confidence inherently fragile, perpetually vulnerable to being swept away. It is a precarious existence, is it not? To constantly feel that a single difficult day, a solitary negative remark, or a shift in fortune stands between us and the conviction of our own inadequacy. This emotional tempest leaves us adrift in a sea of anxiety, perpetually grasping for more, and paralyzed by the dread of losing whatever ephemeral source of self-worth we have momentarily secured. This is the juncture at which we must pivot to explore a more robust alternative. It is the art of cultivating confidence from the very core of one's being. This is not an exercise in self-aggrandizement or the adoption of a false persona. Rather, it is the quiet, profound realization of one's intrinsic value, inherent capability, and undeniable significance, irrespective of the external milieu. This is the essence of internal confidence. Internal confidence functions as a deep, unyielding root system. Though perhaps unseen on the surface, it provides the unwavering stability that allows an entire tree to withstand the most ferocious storms. It is a steadfast belief in one's own worth and capabilities, a conviction that emanates from within. The state of one's hair, the recent acquisition of a promotion, or the perceived favor of others become irrelevant. Internal confidence remains steadfast and true, for it is liberated from the capricious dictates of external factors. It is not about achieving preeminence or always being correct. It is about a fundamental embrace of one's authentic self, imperfections and all, and a quiet trust in one's inherent character and inner fortitude. Unlike the ephemeral confidence derived from sandcastles, so easily dismantled by the slightest disturbance, internal confidence possesses remarkable resilience. It is forged through the recognition that the external world is in constant flux, and the conscious decision to anchor one's self-esteem to a more enduring source, one's own inner qualities. But what, precisely, constitute these inner qualities? And how do we embark upon their discovery? The bedrock of internal confidence rests upon two fundamental pillars: self-awareness and self-acceptance. First, self-awareness. This entails an intimate exploration of one's own being, a profound understanding of one's core beliefs, and a clarity regarding what holds true significance, one's personal values. What ignites a sense of aliveness? What kind of person does one aspire to become? It also encompasses the recognition of one's strengths, not merely in terms of performance, but the unique qualities one contributes to the world. And yes, it also involves an honest appraisal of one's weaknesses, the areas where challenges arise. This is not an invitation to self-recrimination. It is, rather, a dispassionate observation akin to charting an internal landscape. When one's values are clearly defined, they serve as a compass. When strengths are recognized, they become invaluable tools. When struggles are understood, they can be approached with gentleness rather than judgment. This profound self-knowledge is the initial step toward constructing an edifice that cannot be eroded. Then, we arrive at self-acceptance. This is the precipice where many falter. We dedicate considerable energy to eradicating perceived flaws, striving to conform to idealized external expectations, or emulating the curated images presented through social media. We may fixate on our physical form, the texture of our skin, the timbre of our voice, or a perceived deficit in intellect. This relentless internal conflict breeds a profound sense of disharmony. Self-acceptance stands in direct opposition to this internal struggle. It is the act of embracing all facets of oneself, the luminous, the shadowed, and the unvarnished, and affirming, "This is who I am, and that is perfectly acceptable." It is the willingness to embrace imperfections not as failures, but as integral elements of one's unique narrative. It is the realization that the pursuit of an unattainable external ideal is a futile endeavor, and that true worth is found in accepting oneself precisely as one is, in this very moment. Consider the pervasive struggle many face regarding their appearance. The relentless pressure to conform to a particular aesthetic can be utterly overwhelming. We may resort to every conceivable diet, every topical remedy, every stylistic permutation, harboring the hope that external perfection will finally confer a sense of adequacy. Yet, as we have observed, this is akin to constructing a fortress upon shifting sands. The instant one's appearance alters or a perceived flaw is highlighted, that edifice of confidence crumbles. Internal confidence, conversely, ensures that even on days when one does not feel at their physical peak, their inherent worth remains undiminished. One recognizes the presence of a good heart, a sharp intellect, a benevolent spirit, or a singular talent. One acknowledges that appearance is but a minor facet of one's being and does not dictate intrinsic value. This acceptance liberates one from the ceaseless pursuit of an ever-shifting external standard, allowing for presence and the genuine enjoyment of life rather than perpetual preoccupation with outward presentation. So, how does one practically implement this profound shift? How does one transition from a self-constructed of ephemeral sand to an unshakable inner core? This is not a singular solution, but rather a continuous practice, a lifelong journey. Here are some actionable steps to initiate this transformation. One of the most potent practices is mindful self-talk. We all possess an inner monologue. For many, this internal voice is relentlessly critical, highlighting every misstep, every perceived deficiency, every whisper of doubt, fanning the flames of insecurity. Were a friend to address you with such harshness, you would undoubtedly implore them to cease. Mindful self-talk involves becoming acutely aware of this internal dialogue and deliberately choosing to reframe it. Instead of lamenting, "I am so foolish for making that error," endeavor to say, "That did not unfold as planned. What can I glean from this experience?" Rather than, "I am so awkward," try, "I am feeling a touch reserved at this moment, and that is permissible." It is about supplanting harsh judgment with understanding and support, about becoming one's own most steadfast ally, offering encouragement rather than condemnation. This alteration in our internal discourse is foundational, for it directly influences our self-perception. When we cease our internal chastisement, we create fertile ground for self-compassion and the cultivation of a more positive self-image. Another crucial element is to focus on growth, not perfection. We inhabit a world that often venerates flawlessness. Polished images and highlight reels are ubiquitous, fostering a sense of inadequacy when we are less than perfect. Yet, the reality is that perfection is an illusion. Mistakes are not the antithesis of success. They are often integral components of the journey toward it. When one prioritizes growth, one celebrates the effort expended, the lessons acquired, and the progress achieved, however incremental. Did you venture into something new despite apprehension? That is a victory. Did you extract wisdom from a setback? That is a profound triumph. This mindset redirects attention from an unattainable ideal of flawlessness to the ongoing, rewarding process of self-improvement. It encourages an appreciation for the journey and the learning that transpires en route, rather than an obsessive fixation on the ultimate outcome. This renders setbacks less devastating and successes more meaningful, as they are intrinsically linked to your endeavor and learning rather than solely to a flawless result. Aligning one's actions with one's values is also of paramount importance. When one lives a life congruent with deeply held beliefs, a profound sense of integrity and self-respect is cultivated. For instance, if honesty is a cherished value, yet one finds oneself distorting the truth to appease others, an internal dissonance and unease are likely to arise. This incongruency erodes one's confidence. However, when actions faithfully mirror core values, when one upholds honesty even in challenging circumstances, extends kindness to others, because it is deemed the right course of action, or pursues endeavors that resonate with one's passions, a robust inner foundation is established. One can meet their own gaze in the mirror with the knowledge that they are living authentically. This authenticity is a potent wellspring of internal confidence. It is a quiet assurance of one's fidelity to oneself, a profound source of strength. It negates the necessity for pretense or performance, as one is at ease with their identity and the manner in which they navigate life. Finally, the practice of self-compassion is indispensable. This involves extending to oneself the same kindness, understanding, and care that one would readily offer to a cherished friend. Experiencing adversity. When one errs, instead of resorting to harsh self-criticism, offer understanding. When overwhelmed, acknowledge these feelings without judgment. When struggling, provide oneself with solace and support. Self-compassion is not an excuse for negligence or a means of evading responsibility. It is the recognition that suffering and imperfection are inherent aspects of the human experience. It is the acknowledgement that, as a human being, one is deserving of kindness, particularly from oneself. This practice serves to temper the inner critic and foster a more nurturing relationship with oneself. It is akin to offering oneself a warm embrace when it is most needed, a gentle reminder that one is not alone in their struggles and that one is worthy of love and care, precisely as they are. The transition from a self-constructed ephemeral sand to an unshakable inner core commences with a comprehension of the nature of our own perceptions. Now that we have elucidated the fragility of external anchors and the promise inherent in cultivating confidence from within, the subsequent critical step involves scrutinizing the internal narratives that have heretofore shaped our self-perception. We must endeavor to identify the stories we recount to ourselves, for these narratives are the very blueprints of our inner world. 3. The shifting sands of external validation. We all yearn for it, don't we? That satisfying warmth that washes over us when our attire is lauded, our efforts are commended, or a smile of approval graces our way. It is an intrinsic human imperative to be esteemed and embraced. We frequently label this pursuit as seeking external validation, a practice akin to searching beyond ourselves for definitive proof of our adequacy, worth, or inherent value. Consider the digital affirmation of a social media compliment, the subtle acknowledgement of a colleague, the tender assurance of a beloved, or even the simple, pleased reflection in a mirror. Each is a fleeting moment where an external source bestows a sense of affirmation. However, herein lies the insidious complexity, a truth many of us discover through arduous experience. This form of validation is as ephemeral as a sandcastle. It feels magnificent as you pat down the damp grains, sculpting walls and turrets. The sun glints, the moat appears flawless, and a swell of pride emerges. You might even invite others to marvel at your creation. For a time, it stands as a testament to beauty and strength. But what becomes of it when the tide surges? Or when a tempestuous wind descends? Or when a boisterous child stomps near? The castle, regardless of its meticulous construction, inevitably begins to disintegrate. Its ramparts are washed away, its spires topple, and soon, little remains. This is precisely the consequence of anchoring our self-assurance to external validation. The accolades we receive today can vanish tomorrow. What one individual deems admirable, another may not even register. Our accomplishments can fade into obscurity, our relationships can shift, and even our physical form is in perpetual flux with the passage of time. If we perpetually rely on others or external circumstances to affirm our state of being, we render ourselves perpetually beholden to forces beyond our genuine dominion. Let us scrutinize these shifting sands more closely. A primary reason for their inherent instability is subjectivity. What one person esteems as sublime, another might overlook entirely. Envision yourself having invested immense effort into a project, pouring your very essence into its creation. You present it to your superior, who bestows effusive praise. Exceptional work. This is precisely what we required. You feel elevated to the zenith of elation, yet, upon recounting this to a friend, they remark, "That's pleasant. I'm not entirely convinced it addresses the overarching issue, though." Abruptly, that wondrous sensation begins to recede. The supervisor's commendation was indeed gratifying, but it was their assessment, contingent upon their requirements. The friend's observation, though perhaps candid, can erode that hard-won sense of achievement. Who then holds the truth? The reality is, both are merely opinions, and opinions, like the weather, are prone to caprice. Furthermore, there is the fluctuation inherent in external circumstances. Life is a ceaseless current. Consider the realm of social media. You might post an image and be inundated with numerous likes and effusive comments. For a few hours, you feel popular and desirable. But subsequently, your next post may garner less attention, or an algorithmic recalibration might diminish its visibility. The likes dissipate, and with them, that transient surge of confidence. Or contemplate one's professional life. You might be the preeminent employee, consistently receiving promotions and accolades. But then, the organization undergoes downsizing, your role is redefined, or a coveted promotion eludes you. The external validation you depended upon, your job title, your achievements, is suddenly diminished or altogether absent. These are not bedrock upon which to build. They are grains of sand easily dispersed. This relentless pursuit of approval engenders a profound sense of unease, dependence. We become akin to a plant requiring perpetual hydration. If the watering ceases, we wither. Anxiety takes root, a constant whisper of doubt about whether we are doing enough, speaking judiciously, or presenting ourselves appropriately. It is an unceasing treadmill. A compliment is received, a fleeting sense of well-being ensues, and then the mind immediately fixates on securing the subsequent commendation. It is never quite sufficient, is it? This pervasive feeling of inadequacy becomes our constant companion, murmuring doubts into our ear. Consider the psychological toll this exacts. When our focus is perpetually on garnering external approval, anxiety can become a formidable adversary. We fret over public perception, whispered commentary, and our perceived shortcomings. This pervasive anxiety can be profoundly exhausting. More critically, it can lead to a forfeiture of our authenticity. We may find ourselves adopting behaviors that we believe will elicit approval, even if they diverge from our innate selves. We might don garments we find unappealing due to their trendiness, assent to viewpoints we do not genuinely hold, or pursue avocations that bring us no joy, all in the hope of securing that coveted nod. Over time, it becomes increasingly arduous to discern our own voice, our inner wisdom, our internal compass. The one that guides us toward what is intrinsically right for us, becomes buried beneath the clamor of what we surmise others desire. Let us return to the Sandcastle. Imagine you have dedicated an entire morning to constructing this magnificent edifice. You have meticulously placed each shell, smoothed every incline, and excavated a flawless moat. A surge of pride washes over you. This is your magnum opus. But then, a wave, far larger than anticipated, crashes ashore and begins to erode the foundation. You rush to erect a barrier, adding more sand, attempting to repel its advance. Another wave arrives, and then another. You frantically endeavor to repair and reinforce, but the ocean's might is formidable, and your sandcastle, by its very nature, is transient. This is the modus operandi of constructing self-confidence upon external validation. Each compliment, each like, each successful endeavor is akin to adding another handful of sand. It fosters an illusion of progress, of building something tangible. But the tide is life itself. Life ushers in criticism, dissent, failures, shifts in public perception, and even the inexorable march of time that alters our appearance or capabilities. When these tides arrive, and they invariably do, the sandcastle of our confidence begins to recede. The more grand and elaborate the sandcastle, the more profound the sense of loss when it vanishes. We are left hollow, exposed, and questioning the whereabouts of our intrinsic worth. There exists, too, a subtle deception at play, the illusion of control. When we harbor the belief, if only I can garner sufficient approval, or achieve X, Y, and Z, then I shall finally feel secure, we persuade ourselves that we are orchestrating our own value. We imagine we can engineer our way to confidence by accumulating a requisite volume of positive external affirmations. Yet, the stark reality is that our influence over others' perceptions is exceedingly limited. We cannot compel affection. We cannot guarantee that our achievements will perpetually be acknowledged or valued. We cannot halt the passage of time or the metamorphosis of our physical forms. Attempting to manipulate these external factors to bolster our self-esteem is tantamount to attempting to command the ocean's tides, a futile and exhausting endeavor. Now, let us pause and reflect. Recall an instance when you felt a profound sense of self-satisfaction, only for an event to subsequently diminish that feeling. Upon what were you relying at that juncture? Did your elation stem from a compliment, only to be deflated when the conversation concluded or the individual departed? Were you proud of an accomplishment, only to feel insecure when another achieved something comparable or superior? What specific waves or tides have most significantly eroded your previous sandcastle of confidence, and what external anchors were you relying upon at those moments? Dedicate a moment to delving into your past experiences. Perhaps a romantic separation prompted you to question your attractiveness or your value as a partner. At that time, your confidence may have been inextricably linked to your relationship status and the validation derived from being cherished by that particular individual. Or perhaps a scathing critique at work led you to doubt your capabilities despite prior commendations. In that scenario, your confidence might have been constructed from the very bricks of your professional achievements and the recognition bestowed by your superiors, or perhaps a remark concerning your appearance lodged itself in your mind, inducing self-consciousness about your physique. Your sandcastle then was likely built upon the capricious sands of societal beauty standards and the approbation of others regarding your physical presentation. Consider how the very pursuit can be an exhausting undertaking. Even when we experience that fleeting surge from external validation, it seldom imparts a sense of genuine fulfillment, does it? It is more akin to a sugar rush, a brief effervescence of energy swiftly followed by a subsequent depletion. How does the pursuit of external validation, even when temporarily successful, engender a feeling of anxiety or emptiness rather than enduring contentment? The quest for external validation resembles the perpetual endeavor to fill a leaky vessel. You pour in praise, admiration, and approval, but due to the vessel's perforations, the positive sensations continuously drain away. You are perpetually in need of more. This unceasing effort to obtain the next infusion of validation is profoundly enervating. It leaves you feeling anxious, as you are constantly preoccupied with what you must do next to merit that approval. It cultivates emptiness because the validation itself is not rooted in anything authentic and enduring within you. It is akin to consuming empty calories. It satiates the stomach momentarily but fails to nourish. The fulfillment we truly crave emanates from a more profound source, a wellspring that external validation is simply incapable of accessing. It is like attempting to slake a profound thirst with a sip of salt water. It only exacerbates your parched state. Now, let us engage in a brief mental exercise, a cognitive experiment designed to vividly illustrate the extent to which we rely on these external opinions. Imagine yourself completely isolated from any form of external feedback for a solitary week. No one can apprise you of your performance, offer compliments on your appearance, or comment on your actions. If you were to entirely eliminate the possibility of external feedback for 1 week, what would constitute the most formidable challenge in navigating your daily existence? And what would be the underlying reason for this difficulty? For many, the most daunting aspect would be the profound silence. The absence of that incessant hum of external opinion would feel deafening. It would be difficult to ascertain if one is progressing on the correct trajectory. For instance, making a professional decision might feel fraught with peril without the prospect of immediate managerial approval or disapproval. Selecting one's attire could transform into a source of stress if one cannot gauge how others might perceive their ensemble. Even rudimentary social interactions could feel awkward without the subtle cues of nods, smiles, or agreement from others. This challenge arises because we have conditioned ourselves to utilize external feedback as our primary navigational tool. In its absence, we feel adrift, uncertain of our own judgment and intrinsic value. It compels us to confront the reality that we have outsourced a significant portion of our self-appraisal, and now, bereft of those external indicators, we are left to ponder, who am I when no one is observing or providing commentary? While the allure of external approval is potent and deeply ingrained, its inherently transient nature leaves us perpetually susceptible. The ceaseless ebb and flow of commendation and censure ultimately deplete our vitality and obscure our true selves. We expend so much time and energy constructing these exquisite yet fragile sandcastles, only to witness their dissolution with the shifting tides. But what if an alternative method of construction existed? What if the bedrock of our confidence was not composed of sand at all, but of something far more resilient? The solution lies not in seeking validation from without, but in cultivating a profound understanding and acceptance from within. This brings us to the indispensable initial step in constructing that unshakable internal bulwark, recognizing your inner landscape. Chapter 2. Building Lasting Confidence. 1. Beyond the temporary, finding true worth. We dedicate so much of our existence to constructing something tangible, something that resonates as authentically us. We survey our surroundings, observing what appears to imbue others with a sense of contentment, what garners admiration, and we begin to accumulate these perceived markers. Our focus might fixate on our physical presentation, the digits on a scale, the prestige of our vehicle, the gravitas of our job title, or the caliber of our companions. We may even aspire to embody the ideal partner, the flawless parent, or the exemplary employee. Each of these elements feels akin to a brick, a steadfast component in the edifice we erect around ourselves, a bulwark we hope will offer sanctuary and affirm our inherent value. Yet, have you ever observed the startling ephemerality of such fortifications? One moment, you might feel elated by accolades received at work. The next, a single critical remark can send you into a disorienting spiral. The exhilaration of a successful workout can swiftly transmute into discouragement upon encountering an unflattering photograph. Relationships, often perceived as the bedrock of our happiness, can fracture or dissolve entirely, leaving us adrift and questioning our identity in the absence of that connection. Even our physical selves, to which we often dedicate prodigious energy, are in a perpetual state of flux. Our appearance evolves with age, with health, with the inexorable march of time. Fashions become obsolete, and our possessions, once cutting edge, are quickly relegated to the past. This is the fundamental predicament of the Sandcastle. We meticulously construct our sense of self, our confidence, from materials inherently transient. We are stacking wet sand, shaping it with care, and fervently hoping it will withstand the encroaching tide. But the tide invariably arrives. Life is synonymous with change. And when the external pillars upon which we have leaned begin to waver, as they inevitably will, our sandcastle of confidence begins to erode. The attendant anxiety is profoundly exhausting. We exist in a perpetual state of low-grade apprehension, our gaze perpetually scanning the horizon for the next swell that threatens to obliterate all our diligent labor, our painstakingly assembled self. Consider this for a moment. How much mental energy do you expend fretting over the opinions of others? How frequently do you find yourself contrasting your life, your accomplishments, your visage with those of your peers? This ceaseless quest for external validation is akin to attempting to fill a sieve. Regardless of the volume of praise or success you pour into it, it never feels truly replete. You are perpetually seeking more, forever in need of the next compliment, the next triumph, the next affirmation to sustain your precarious confidence. This is because the validation fails to permeate, it merely trickles through the fissures. It offers a fleeting augmentation, a transient sensation rather than a profound, unshakable fortitude. This relentless pursuit of external approval exacts a considerable toll. It compels us to perpetually perform, to contort ourselves into the guise we perceive others desire, rather than embracing our authentic selves. We develop a paralyzing dread of error or the revelation of vulnerability, fearing it will shatter the persona we have so painstakingly sculpted. Every critique, every disagreement, every perceived failing becomes a direct assault on our very being, for we have inextricably linked our worth to these external metrics. It is a precarious existence, perpetually under the strain of maintaining a facade, and it leaves us feeling hollow even amidst the applause of the world. But what if an alternative pathway existed? What if our worth were not a prize to be perpetually earned or fiercely defended? What if it were an intrinsic quality, something already present, merely awaiting recognition? This is the concept of true worth, a radical notion in a world that incessantly exhorts us to do more, be more, have more to be deemed valuable. True worth transcends achievements, appearance, and the judgments of others. It is the foundational conviction that you possess inherent value simply by virtue of your existence. It is the quiet understanding that you are endowed with intrinsic dignity and worth, a value impervious to the vicissitudes of external circumstance. This stands in stark contrast to self-esteem, which is often tethered to our performance or our comparative standing. Self-esteem is inherently mutable. You might experience elevated self-esteem during periods of professional success, only to witness it diminish in the face of adversity. True worth, however, represents a more profound, more stable bedrock. It is akin to the unyielding foundation beneath shifting sands. Even when the surface is disturbed, the bedrock remains steadfast. It is the quiet, unwavering certainty that you are sufficient, precisely as you are, in this very moment. So how do we embark on the journey to discover this true worth, particularly after so much time has been invested in constructing sandcastles? The initial step lies in recognizing that it is not about acquiring something novel. It is not about augmenting the wall with additional bricks or discovering a more resilient form of sand. It is about reorienting our gaze inward. It is about ceasing the frantic search for external affirmation and commencing an exploration of what already resides within us. It represents a paradigm shift, moving from the question, "What do I possess?" to "Who am I at my essence?" Envision a magnificent diamond. This diamond is inherently valuable, precious, and its worth remains constant. Now, imagine that diamond becomes encrusted with a thick layer of grime. Does the diamond forfeit its value? It remains the same precious jewel, it is merely obscured. The grime can be meticulously removed, and the diamond's inherent brilliance will once again radiate. Our intrinsic worth is analogous to that diamond. Life's experiences, our own insecurities, and societal pronouncements can, at times, obscure it with layers of doubt, comparison, and external expectations. But the diamond, our true worth, is perpetually present, immutable. We simply need to learn the gentle art of brushing away the obscuring dust. This alteration in perspective is paramount. It marks the moment we cease to perceive ourselves as a perpetual work in progress, dictated by external judgments, and begin to recognize ourselves as complete and valuable beings, deserving of love and respect, irrespective of our external circumstances. It is the realization that the perceived flaws, the missteps we have taken, the moments we feel we have fallen short, these are not indicators of our worthlessness, but rather integral components of the human experience. They are the superficial abrasions on the diamond, not the absence of the diamond itself. This journey is rarely facile, particularly when we have been so profoundly conditioned to seek validation externally. We are assailed by messages that inextricably link our value to our achievements, our appearance, our possessions, or our social standing. Thus, how do we begin to identify and trust this intrinsic value, this true worth, when our environment so vociferously advocates otherwise? It necessitates a conscious effort to interrogate these external narratives and to attune ourselves to our own inner voice, that one that whispers of our core values, our unique attributes, and our fundamental human dignity. The analytical query that frequently arises is this: how does the inherent transience of external factors such as our appearance, our possessions, or our companions directly undermine the stability of confidence built upon them? The answer resides in the very essence of change. If your confidence is akin to a sandcastle, erected upon a foundation of perpetually shifting elements, then your confidence will invariably be precarious. When your appearance alters due to age or health, your confidence predicated on looks will falter. When a relationship dissolves, your confidence tied to partnership will be shaken. When your employment is terminated, your confidence derived from career success will feel as though it is dissipating. These external factors are akin to waves. They ebb and flow, they sculpt the shoreline, but they can never permanently alter the bedrock beneath. When we construct our confidence upon these ephemeral shores, we are, in essence, building on unstable terrain. The instant the tide recedes, our meticulously crafted confidence is imperiled. It is an unceasing struggle against the inevitable, a battle destined for defeat if we rely solely on these fleeting external supports. And what of the specific psychological and emotional costs incurred by a life lived in pursuit of external validation? How does this pursuit impede our discovery of intrinsic worth? It is a steep price to pay. It entails living with a pervasive fear of scrutiny. We self-censor our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, perpetually anxious about the perceptions of others. This apprehension can precipitate anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of being perpetually on edge. It also erodes our capacity for genuine self-knowledge. When our focus is so intensely fixed on the desires or approvals of others, we cease to attend to our own aspirations, our own passions, our own internal compass. We become disassociated from our authentic selves. This incessant craving for approval also renders us profoundly vulnerable. Our emotional equilibrium becomes contingent upon the opinions of others, which are, by their very nature, unpredictable and often inconsistent. A kind word can elevate us, but a critical one can precipitate our downfall. This emotional tempest is exhausting and prevents us from establishing a stable sense of self-worth. It is akin to attempting to navigate a vessel with a sail that catches every gust of wind you are buffeted by forces beyond your control, perpetually unable to chart a steady course. Therefore, if true worth is not earned or achieved, how can an individual commence the process of identifying and cultivating a belief in this intrinsic value, particularly when societal conditioning champions external accomplishments? This is the quintessential question, and the answer is not a facile remedy, but a gentle, persistent practice. It commences with subtle acts of self-awareness. Observe what genuinely engenders joy, not what you believe ought to bring you joy or what appears laudable on social media. What activities cause you to lose all track of time? What conversations leave you feeling invigorated and connected? These are indicators of your inner landscape. It also entails practicing self-compassion. When you err, rather than castigating yourself, endeavor to address yourself as you would a cherished friend experiencing difficulty. Acknowledge the challenge, extend kindness, and remind yourself that mistakes are an inherent part of the human condition, not a reflection of your core value. Another potent instrument is the identification of your core values. What principles hold the greatest significance for you? Creativity? When you conduct your life in alignment with your values, you cultivate a sense of integrity and self-respect that is independent of external outcomes. This is where genuine confidence begins to take root. It is about recognizing that your character, your intentions, and your commitment to your beliefs are far more valuable and enduring than any transient external success. It is about constructing an internal compass to guide you rather than perpetually consulting an external map. Once we grasp that our worth is not a commodity to be bartered, exchanged, or sustained through external endeavors, we can embark on the vital work of excavating that inherent value. But how do we initiate this excavation? The subsequent step involves comprehending the internal terrain where this true worth resides, our inner compass, our core values, and the principles that genuinely define us, independent of the capricious shifts of the external world. 2. Healing from the past. The weight of yesterday can feel impossibly heavy, can't it? It's akin to shouldering a pack laden with stones, each one a potent relic, a memory etched in pain, a word that wounded, a moment of profound shame, or a crushing disappointment. We may delude ourselves into believing we've shed these burdens, yet they remain, a persistent, abrasive presence against our backs, slowing our stride, diminishing our certainty with every step. These are the unseen anchors, the invisible fetters that can arrest the very construction of authentic, enduring confidence. Consider this. We all carry such ballast. Perhaps it is a dismissive remark from a teacher in elementary school that lodged itself in your mind, fostering a pervasive doubt about your own intellect. Or maybe it was a humiliating experience of rejection by peers that now fuels a constant apprehension of public scrutiny. Even seemingly minor events, a parent's careless critique, a moment where you felt fundamentally insufficient, can implant deep-seated convictions within us. These beliefs often lie dormant just beneath the surface, insidious whispers eroding our sense of worth, our belief in our capabilities, and even our inherent right to self-satisfaction. They are the clandestine forces that instill a perpetual feeling of inadequacy, regardless of our earnest efforts. These residual hurts can lay a foundation of profound instability for our self-assurance. We might endeavor to fortify our self-esteem, to embrace our present selves. But if these old wounds remain unaddressed, they are akin to hairline fractures in concrete. A sudden gust of adversity, a sharp word, or a fleeting moment of self-doubt can cause the entire edifice to shudder, or worse, to collapse. This is precisely why attempting to construct confidence upon transient pillars such as our physical appearance, our accomplishments, or the affection of others is an exercise in futility. If our self-worth hinges on the successful completion of a project, what becomes of it when we encounter a difficult day at work? If it is tethered to a relationship, what happens when that connection inevitably shifts? Our unhealed past traumas can render us exponentially more vulnerable when these external anchors falter. It is akin to meticulously constructing a sandcastle on a shore perpetually subject to the ebb and flow of the tide. We can fashion something exquisite, yet we remain in a state of perpetual anxiety, anticipating the next inevitable wave. If we fail to confront the underlying issues from our past, our confidence transforms into a sandcastle perpetually menaced by the specter of past tempests. We might project an aura of strength, but deep within, we are perpetually bracing for the resurgence of old hurts. So, where does the journey of healing commence? The inaugural step, often the most arduous, is unflinching self-honesty. It demands a deep inhalation and an inward gaze, not for the purpose of dwelling or assigning blame, but to simply bear witness to what resides within. We must precisely identify those past experiences that have sculpted our negative self-perceptions. What specific instances or recurring patterns have instilled in us a diminished sense of worth, competence, or lovability? This is not an exercise in masochistic reliving of pain. Rather, it mirrors a physician's imperative to diagnose an ailment before prescribing a remedy. We must comprehend the impact these events have exerted upon us. Consider, for instance, a young woman we shall call Maya. Maya was perpetually subjected to her older brother's pronouncements that she was clumsy and intellectually deficient. As a child, she internalized his judgments. Now, as an adult, despite a successful career and a demonstrated capacity for rapid learning, she still hesitates to voice her opinions in professional settings, convinced she will utter something foolish. She actively shies away from exploring new avocations, fearing inevitable failure. Her brother's childhood taunts have become an ingrained impediment, a deeply embedded conviction that she is less capable than she truly is. Her confidence is a sandcastle constructed upon the premise of her intellectual inferiority, and any challenge feels like a wave, poised to obliterate it. Or contemplate David. During his adolescence, he endured a profoundly public social humiliation. He felt as though the entire student body was mocking him. For years, he carried that shame like a shroud. Now, though that event is a distant memory and largely forgotten by others, David continues to grapple with debilitating social anxiety. He avoids social gatherings, experiences trepidation when meeting new individuals, and frequently feels awkward in communal settings. He harbors the unshakable conviction that he is perpetually under scrutiny, much as he perceived it to be in the past. His confidence is a sandcastle built upon the bedrock of social apprehension, and every new interpersonal encounter feels like an impending tidal wave. These are not mere isolated incidents. They are potent illustrations of how the past can leave indelible marks, engendering internal narratives that dictate our self-perception. If we harbor the belief that we are inherently insufficient due to an event from years ago, that belief will cast a pall over every facet of our present lives. It will foster indecisiveness, engender hesitation in pursuing opportunities, and create a ceaseless craving for external validation. This stands in stark opposition to authentic, internal confidence, which is predicated on an unshakable recognition of one's own intrinsic worth, irrespective of external circumstances. The ultimate objective of healing is not to obliterate these memories or to feign their non-existence. That is akin to attempting to erect a sandcastle while wishing the ocean were absent and impossible, an ultimately futile endeavor. Instead, healing entails a profound comprehension of the narrative, an extraction of its invaluable lessons, and a conscious, deliberate choice to relinquish the emotional residue and the limiting beliefs that these past events have become inextricably entwined with. It is the courageous acknowledgement of, yes, this occurred, and it inflicted pain, and it engendered these feelings. However, that was then, and this is now, and I am no longer defined by that singular moment or that solitary emotion. This process of release is paramount to the cultivation of internal confidence. When we cling to the pain and self-doubt of the past, it is tantamount to carrying an immense and cumbersome burden. Every forward step becomes an arduous struggle. Conversely, when we master the art of processing these experiences, of understanding their context, and of disentangling our present selves from those past hurts, we can begin to lighten that load. We can then commence building our confidence upon a foundation that is both stable and robust, rather than upon the capricious sands of past regrets. So, what does this process of release concretely entail? It is not a miraculous intervention, but rather a series of intentional actions. One of the most potent instruments at our disposal is journaling. Dedicating time to articulate your thoughts and emotions concerning past events can yield remarkable clarity. You might commence with straightforward prompts. For Maya, this could involve writing about specific instances where she felt intelligent or capable, and subsequently exploring the reasons she discounted those very feelings. For David, it might entail recounting the social embarrassment, not to wallow in the pain, but to meticulously dissect what transpired, who was present, and what the enduring repercussions truly were. He might pose questions to himself. Did anyone utter an explicitly cruel remark to me? Or was it merely my perception that they were? How many individuals even retain a memory of that day? And to what extent does that single day define who I am in this present moment? Another invaluable strategy is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the conscious act of attending to the present moment without judgment. When those ancient anxieties and fears from the past begin to resurface, mindfulness empowers you to observe them without succumbing to their influence. You can acknowledge the thought, I am not good enough, and then gently remind yourself, that is merely a thought, a vestige of the past. It bears no reflection on who I am presently. This practice cultivates a vital interstice between yourself and those ingrained, detrimental beliefs. Occasionally, confiding in a trusted friend, a family member, or even a professional therapist can prove immensely beneficial. Articulating your narrative to someone who can listen with empathy and without judgment can provide invaluable new perspectives and foster a profound sense of connection. A therapist, in particular, can offer expert guidance and implementable strategies to navigate complex emotional landscapes and address deeply entrenched issues. They can illuminate the patterns through which the past has shaped your present and guide you toward healthier coping mechanisms and avenues for personal growth. It also involves the direct confrontation of those old, deleterious convictions. When you find yourself thinking, I am incapable of this because I previously failed at something analogous, pause and critically interrogate. Is that assertion verifiably true? What evidence do I possess that suggests I'm capable of excelling in this? What knowledge have I acquired since that time? What new proficiencies have I developed? This active, inquisitive approach serves to dismantle the potency of those antiquated narratives. This journey of healing from the past is fundamentally about reclaiming your personal narrative. For an extended period, we may have permitted past experiences to script our story, casting us in the roles of victim or failure. However, by acknowledging these wounds and consciously choosing to process them, we begin to seize the pen. We become the architects of our own destinies, not merely characters within a story that unfolded upon us. We begin to apprehend that those past events constituted chapters, not the entirety of the book. This act of reclamation is what empowers us to construct internal confidence. When we have diligently engaged in the work of acknowledging and releasing the past, we cease to build our self-worth upon the precarious terrain of external opinion or the dictates of transient circumstances. We erect it upon the unyielding bedrock of our own resilience, our own self-compassion, and our own profound understanding of our intrinsic being independent of what has transpired. Visualize it thus. Maya, having consciously navigated the repercussions of her brother's pronouncements, begins to recalibrate her internal discourse. She starts to consciously identify moments of hesitation in professional settings and actively challenges the ingrained thought, "I will sound foolish." She might even initiate by contributing a concise, well-researched point, and then deliberately affirm herself for doing so. She is not endeavoring to obliterate her brother's criticism, but rather learning to perceive it for what it was, the pronouncements of a child, not an immutable truth about her intellectual capacity. She is actively constructing a new narrative wherein she is both competent and insightful. David, through therapeutic intervention and mindful practice, commences to recognize his social anxiety as a learned response rooted in a past event. He begins by deliberately engaging in minor social interactions, such as making eye contact with a shop assistant or offering a greeting to a neighbor. He practices reminding himself that the majority of individuals are not preoccupied with scrutinizing him, and that even if they were, it would not diminish his inherent value. He is not attempting to erase the memory of his adolescent mortification, but rather learning to view it as a singular, painful episode that does not define his current social engagements or his intrinsic worth as an individual. This is the very essence of cultivating internal confidence. It involves an examination of the foundation upon which our self-worth is built and the realization that some of the materials utilized are antiquated, compromised, and unreliable. Healing from the past is the meticulous process of clearing away those unstable elements and introducing new, robust, and enduring components. It is the acceptance that the past has undeniably shaped us, but it does not possess the power to dictate our future. It is the profound understanding that while we cannot alter what has occurred, we possess the absolute capacity to modify our response to it and to govern its influence on our trajectory. When we undertake this transformative work, we are not merely attempting superficial repairs, we are fundamentally fortifying the core of our being. We are forging a self that is less beholden to the fluctuating tides of external validation and more deeply rooted in the steadfast earth of self-acceptance. This constitutes the bedrock upon which genuine, enduring confidence is constructed. It is a confidence that remains unyielding when the tumultuous waves of life surge, for its foundation lies deep within, secure and immutable. And once we begin to loosen the formidable grip of the past, once we perceive that we are no longer being inexorably drawn backward by old hurts and ingrained beliefs, we can then redirect our focus toward the active cultivation of those internal resources that form the very bedrock of lasting confidence. This leads us naturally to an exploration of the crucial role of self-awareness and the profound power of mindful self-talk in sculpting our inner landscape. 3. Embracing impermanence. For far too long, I mistook confidence for a tangible acquisition akin to a new ensemble or a coveted promotion. It was an illusion woven from outward appearances, the accumulation of possessions, or the company one kept. I pursued these ephemeral treasures, convinced they were the bedrock upon which my self-worth could stand unassailable. Yet, life possesses a profound, often gentle, way of revealing that the ground beneath us is rarely as steadfast as we might wish. It is, in essence, the act of constructing a sandcastle on the shore. Consider this. We dedicate hours, sometimes years, to meticulously shaping these idealized sandcastles. We pat down the yielding, damp grains, sculpt the walls to a pleasing smoothness, excavate a protective moat, and perhaps adorn them with a delicate shell. In the fleeting moment of their completion, they appear magnificent, even formidable. A surge of pride swells within us. This, we tell ourselves, is it. This is what solidifies my sense of self. But then, the tide begins its inexorable advance. At first, a subtle infiltration, then a determined surge. The waves crash, the water encroaches, and before we can fully comprehend it, Our exquisite sandcastle has dissolved, reclaimed by the vast, indifferent sea. This, precisely, is the sensation of anchoring one's confidence to external dependencies. We frequently persuade ourselves that the contours of our attractiveness, the heft of our finances, or the nature of our romantic entanglements constitute the very foundation of our self-assurance. We channel our energies into fortifying these external ramparts. Hours are devoted to the gym, clothing choices are agonized over with meticulous care, late nights are spent scaling the corporate ladder, and relationships are painstakingly preserved in a state of manufactured perfection. This fervent effort stems from a deeply ingrained societal narrative, often amplified by our own internal critic, that these markers are the arbiters of our worthiness. They are, we've been led to believe, the definitive metrics of success, the irrefutable proof of our adequacy. But this conviction is, in reality, a mirage. The simple, undeniable truth is that these external determinants are in a perpetual state of flux. Life itself is a succession of tides, and nothing external remains immutable forever. Our physical forms inevitably yield to the passage of time. Our bodies, subject to illness or the mere relentless march of existence, may deviate from our desired contours. Careers undergo seismic shifts, companies contract, and achievements, however monumental, eventually recede into the realm of memory. Relationships, too, are dynamic entities. Individuals evolve, circumstances contort, and, with sorrowful inevitability, connections can fray. Even that which appears as steadfast as our health is susceptible to the unpredictable currents of fate. This is the fundamental characteristic of existence: impermanence. It is not a critique, but an observation of the world's inherent operation. And when our sense of self, our intrinsic feeling of worth, becomes inextricably bound to these ever-shifting external elements, we condemn ourselves to an unending struggle against the inevitable. We become akin to the sandcastle architect, perpetually vigilant against the encroaching tide, forever haunted by the specter of our creation's dissolution. I recall a period in my life when I believed I had finally erected a sandcastle of considerable solidity. I was entwined in a relationship that commanded universal admiration. I held a position that bore the imprimatur of professional success, and for a time, I reveled in the curated image I presented to the world. This is it, I declared to myself. I've cracked the code. I am finally confident. But then, subtly at first, the currents began to shift. The relationship, which I had perceived as an immutable pillar of my felicity, began to reveal fissures. My career, which I had deemed impervious to disruption, encountered unforeseen turbulence. And the physical visage I had so assiduously cultivated started its gentle, age-induced metamorphosis. Suddenly, the very foundation I had presumed to be unshakable began to fracture. The pride that had buoyed me transmuted into trepidation. The sense of security was supplanted by a gnawing unease. What if this relationship falters? What if my career falters? What if my allure diminishes? These what-ifs became the rising tide, relentlessly eroding my sense of self. My confidence, which I had believed to be a fortress, proved to be nothing more than a sandcastle, vulnerable to the natural ebb and flow of life. This experience, though arduous, served as an indispensable tutor. It illuminated the profound emotional cost of erecting my self-worth upon such precarious ground. This reliance on external validation precipitates a perpetual emotional tempest. We exist in a constant state of apprehension, perpetually glancing over our shoulders, fearing what might be wrested from us. The dread of inadequacy, of not being attractive enough, successful enough, or loved enough, becomes an oppressive burden. We engage in ceaseless comparison, invariably discovering reasons why others seem to possess more robust sandcastles, more impregnable foundations. This insidious trap of comparison is not merely exhausting, it is profoundly corrosive to our self-esteem. Our confidence becomes conditional, present when external circumstances align favorably, yet dissolving at the first intimation of adversity. This is not genuine confidence, it is a fragile artifice. The anxiety engendered by this external orientation is immense. We engage in a ceaseless, often futile, endeavor to control that which, by its very nature, defies control. We fret over the opinions of others, the imperative of maintaining appearances, and the necessity of concealing any hint of imperfection. We may resort to overreading or underreading, overworking or evading challenges, all in a desperate bid to preserve this precarious equilibrium. This unremitting vigilance drains our vitality, leaving us depleted and profoundly insecure. The scar I previously alluded to, a physical testament to a past vulnerability inextricably linked to external judgment, served as a constant, hushed reminder of this pervasive fear. It whispered that even amidst apparent stability, the potential for loss or censure lay dormant, an ever-present undercurrent. Yet, herein lies a liberating revelation. When we finally cease our struggle against the tide and begin to embrace the inherent impermanence of external factors, something extraordinary transpires. We discover liberation. This is not an abdication of responsibility or a descent into passivity. It is a profound acknowledgement of reality. It is the quiet utterance, I understand that change is inevitable. I cannot dictate every outcome. This acceptance is not surrender. It is a strategic yielding to what is. It is akin to recognizing the futility of stemming the waves and, instead of erecting one's dwelling at the water's edge, relocating it to higher, more stable terrain. By acknowledging that our appearance will evolve, that our careers may pivot, and that relationships will invariably transform, we liberate ourselves from the exhausting imperative of maintaining the unattainable. We cease the wholesale diversion of our energies into constructing and defending a sandcastle destined for dissolution. Instead, we can begin to redirect that potent energy inward. This acceptance cultivates an expansive space. It is akin to decluttering a neglected room. Once the extraneous is removed, the floor, the walls, and the potential for furnishing with elements of true significance become apparent. This liberated space is where we can commence the exploration and construction of our authentic, internal edifice. Let us, therefore, pause at this juncture and pose ourselves a series of incisive questions. This is where the genuine excavation commences, the work that delves far beneath the superficial. Recall instances from your own life when you leaned heavily on external validation to bolster your sense of self. Perhaps it was a moment of effusive praise for your appearance that ignited a surge of confidence. But what transpired when that adulation waned, or when the initial signs of aging became perceptible? Or perhaps it was a professional triumph or a nascent relationship that propelled you to euphoric heights. How did you feel when that role evolved, or when the initial effervescence of romance settled into the quotidian rhythm? Can you pinpoint specific junctures where this dependence on external affirmation felt akin to building a sandcastle, meticulously crafted, only to be swept away by the inexorable currents of life? Identifying these moments is not an exercise in dwelling on the past or succumbing to regret. It is about discerning the pattern, recognizing the inherent fragility of that foundation, and comprehending the emotional residue it left behind. It is about the honest avowal, yes, I built on sand, and yes, the incoming tide inflicted pain. This unvarnished self-assessment is the nascent step toward confronting the issue. Now, let us cast our gaze forward. What are the most formidable waves of change that you fear might imperil your current sense of self-worth? For some, it may be the dread of aging and the perceived erosion of physical attractiveness. For others, it might be the disquietude of professional displacement and the attendant loss of status. Or perhaps it is the deep-seated apprehension of solitude, the specter of a terminated relationship. These represent the potential tempests on the horizon. How can you begin to recalibrate your perspective on these potential transformations? Instead of steeling yourself for impact, desperately seeking to avert them at all costs, or anticipating their devastating consequences, can you initiate a subtle shift in your focus? Can you begin to perceive these potential shifts not as existential threats, but as integral components of life's natural unfolding? This reframing is the cornerstone of cultivating internal resilience. It is about understanding that even when external circumstances undergo radical alteration, the core of your being, your values, your character, your inner fortitude, can remain inviolate. It is about preparing your inner landscape to weather the storm, rather than attempting to command the storm itself. Embracing impermanence does not equate to cultivating indifference to life's vicissitudes. It signifies a profound understanding that the most profound and enduring sense of self-worth originates not from external bestowals, but from the internal cultivation of our own being. It is the recognition that while a sandcastle may possess ephemeral beauty, it will invariably be subject to the caprices of the tides. True, enduring confidence is constructed upon a far more substantial foundation, one that the relentless waves of change are powerless to erode. Once we truly apprehend the transient nature of the external realm and the emotional toll exacted by anchoring our self-worth, there, we are poised to confront a pivotal question: if not the shifting sands, then upon what unyielding ground can we build? The answer resides not in what the world bestows, but in what we meticulously cultivate within ourselves. This inquiry propels us toward an exploration of the foundational elements of genuine internal confidence. 4. Cultivating inner strength. It is easy to feel like a sandcastle, is it not? We dedicate so much effort to our construction, meticulously arranging each grain of self-worth, only for a formidable wave of criticism, a shift in our appearance, or the dissolution of our relationship to wash it all away. We have all stood there, witnessing our carefully orchestrated confidence crumble, leaving us exposed and adrift. But what if there existed a method to construct something more enduring, something capable of resisting the relentless tides? This is precisely what we shall explore: the cultivation of inner strength, the kind that remains unyielding to the capricious sands of the external world. When we speak of inner strength, it is facile to assume it merely signifies fortitude, akin to someone who can rebound from any setback, and resilience. That innate capacity to recover from adversity is undeniably a significant component. However, inner strength transcends mere survival of the tempest. It is characterized by an abundant internal reservoir of resources that not only facilitates navigation through arduous moments, but enables one to traverse them with an aura of serenity and purpose. It is the profound self-understanding that empowers one to steer their own vessel, even when the waters become turbulent. It is the possession of a quiet assurance that whispers, "I am capable of handling this," not because one anticipates the dissolution of the challenge, but because one trusts their own mettle to confront it. This endeavor commences with a fundamental principle: self-awareness. Envision attempting to erect a dwelling without comprehending the terrain upon which it rests, or the materials at your disposal. It would not endure for long, would it? The same holds true for the construction of our inner fortitude. We must intimately acquaint ourselves with our own being, truly and profoundly. This necessitates an unvarnished appraisal of our strengths, those innate aptitudes or skills diligently honed. It also demands the acknowledgement of our vulnerabilities, not as a prelude to self-recrimination, but as a means to identify areas requiring augmentation or avenues for development. More critically, we must discern our triggers, those elements that tend to provoke us, inducing anxiety, ire, or insecurity. Why do specific remarks regarding your physiognomy diminish your sense of self? Why does a particular form of censure cause you to withdraw? Recognizing these triggers is akin to possessing a cartographic representation of your own emotional topography. It equips you to anticipate potential obstacles and fortify yourself in advance. And finally, we must examine our core beliefs, the deeply ingrained convictions we harbor about ourselves, others, and the world. Are they empowering tenets, such as, "I possess the capacity for learning and evolution," or detrimental notions like, "I am inadequate"? This self-knowledge functions as an internal compass. It directs your choices, elucidates the rationale behind your reactions, and, most importantly, liberates you from the imperative of external validation to define your identity. When you possess an intimate understanding of your own map, you are less prone to disorientation when others attempt to dictate your path. Once we achieve a more profound self-comprehension, the subsequent pivotal phase involves the development of our own internal validation mechanisms. This is the juncture at which we transition from seeking external approval to cultivating self-approval. Contemplate this. We frequently await external affirmation of our accomplishments, our aesthetic appeal, or our inherent worthiness of affection. This perpetual pursuit of external commendation is analogous to a vessel with a persistent leak. Compliments can be poured in, yet they rarely result in lasting replenishment. Thus, how do we construct this internal validation? It commences with the recognition and celebration of our own achievements, irrespective of their perceived magnitude. Did you rouse yourself from slumber when inclination was absent? That is an accomplishment. Did you complete a task that felt overwhelming? Acknowledge it. Did you manage to maintain composure during a fraught telephone conversation? Appreciate the effort. This is not an exercise in self-aggrandizement. Rather, it is about observing and valuing your own actions and progress. It is about becoming your most ardent advocate, not in an ostentatious manner, but with genuine support. This also entails the practice of self-compassion. When circumstances deviate from expectation, when errors are committed, or when aspirations fall short, it is exceedingly easy to be unsparing with oneself. We would never address a confidante with the same acrimony we often direct towards ourselves. Self-compassion signifies treating yourself with the same benevolence, understanding, and encouragement you would extend to a cherished individual. It is the acknowledgement that fallibility is universal, that setbacks are integral to the learning process, and that you are endeavoring to the best of your ability. When you are capable of extending this kindness to yourself, you forge a robust internal foundation of acceptance, thereby diminishing the compulsion to constantly seek external reassurance. The cognitive patterns we adopt exert a profound influence on our inner fortitude. Our thoughts are akin to the atmospheric conditions within our minds. At times, they are luminous and clear, at others, they are tempestuous and somber. Our internal monologue, the incessant stream of thoughts we entertain regarding ourselves and our experiences, plays a pivotal role in the magnitude of our perceived strength. If we incessantly admonish ourselves for inadequacy, for impending failure, or for social alienation, it becomes exceedingly arduous to cultivate confidence. Consequently, we must acquire the capacity to manage our thoughts. This involves becoming cognizant of our negative self-talk. What are the recurrent phrases of self-critique that echo within your consciousness? Do you label yourself as incompetent when you err, or unattractive when you perceive a blemish? Once these thoughts are identified, you can commence their interrogation. Are they verifiably factual? Or are they merely ingrained, counterproductive patterns of cognition? A potent instrument in this regard is reframing. Instead of harboring the thought, I am abysmal at public speaking, I shall mortify myself, endeavor to reframe it as, public speaking is a proficiency I can enhance. I shall prioritize meticulous preparation and glean insights from each engagement. This embodies the essence of a growth mindset. The conviction that our capabilities and intellect can be cultivated through diligent effort and unwavering commitment. It entails perceiving challenges not as indicators of our limitations, but as opportunities for erudite development. Mindfulness constitutes another indispensable practice. It is the act of directing one's attention to the present moment without recourse to judgment. When we are afflicted by anxiety, we are frequently ensnared by apprehensions concerning the future. When we ruminate on the past, we can feel perpetually ensnared. Mindfulness serves to anchor us in the immediacy of the present. It is akin to stepping back from the tumultuous vortex of thoughts and emotions to observe them without being subsumed. This capacity to remain present and grounded renders us less susceptible to external pressures and more in command of our internal state. Ultimately, Authentic inner strength is constructed upon the unshakable edifice of our personal values. Conceive of your values as your fundamental convictions regarding that which holds paramount importance in life. These are the principles that guide your actions, your decisions, and the manner in which you wish to manifest in the world. When you comprehend your foundational principles, be they honesty, benevolence, ingenuity, or valor, you possess an internal compass of remarkable stability. This involves the identification of your core values. What truly resonates with you at your innermost core? What kind of individual do you aspire to be? It is not about conforming to prevailing trends or external expectations. It is about delving deeply to unearth what authentically connects with your intrinsic self. Once these values are identified, the subsequent step is to harmonize your actions and decisions with them. If honesty is a cardinal value, then you endeavor to be truthful in your discourse and conduct. If benevolence is paramount, you make a concerted effort to exhibit compassion towards others. When your existence is conducted in congruence with your values, you engender a profound sense of integrity and authenticity. This unwavering consistency cultivates immense inner strength, as you are no longer susceptible to the ephemeral winds of opinion or circumstance. You possess a clear sense of purpose and direction. This personal operating system of values provides a profound and enduring sense of self-worth that is entirely independent of your external environment. It is the bedrock of intrinsic confidence. Now, let us consider how we can pragmatically distinguish between soliciting constructive critique and merely requiring reassurance of our adequacy. This can be a delicate discernment, can it not? Constructive feedback involves the provision of beneficial suggestions or insights designed to facilitate improvement. For instance, a colleague might remark, "Your presentation was commendable, but perhaps you could moderate your speaking cadence slightly on future occasions to ensure universal comprehension." This constitutes valuable intelligence. It aids in your development. You can derive edification from it. It does not necessarily destabilize your sense of self-worth. You can receive it, contemplate it, and determine its utility. Seeking external validation, conversely, is characterized by the pursuit of affirmation that you are sufficiently capable, talented, or attractive solely to experience transient emotional amelioration. It is akin to requiring a continuous influx of commendation to feel at ease. If you habitually inquire, "Did I perform admirably?" or "Do you find my appearance pleasing?" not out of genuine curiosity, but in the hope of eliciting a specific positive response to elevate your mood, that is an indicator that you may be overly reliant on external validation. The salient distinction lies in your intent and your reaction. With constructive feedback, you exhibit an openness to learning and growth, and your fundamental sense of self remains intact. In the pursuit of external validation, you seek a temporary palliative for your insecurity, and if the feedback is not laudatory, it can feel like a personal affront to your worth. Cultivating inner strength necessitates learning to trust your own judgment and discernment, while remaining receptive to genuine, beneficial input from others. Therefore, what are the practical, quotidian actions we can undertake to construct this internal validation system, moving beyond passive self-acceptance? It involves active engagement. One straightforward yet potent habit is to maintain a wins journal. Each day, record at least one accomplishment or a moment where you navigated a situation with competence. It could be as minor as preparing a nutritious meal, completing a challenging email, or even exercising patience when confronted with frustration. Regular perusal of this journal helps to illuminate a pattern of your own efficacy and effort, thereby reinforcing your belief in your capabilities. Another practice involves the conscious interruption of negative self-talk and its substitution with a more balanced or affirmative cognition. When you detect yourself thinking, "I am so clumsy," endeavor to counter it with, "I occasionally err, but I am also capable of acquiring new motor skills." It is not about feigning an idyllic existence, but about selecting a more beneficial and realistic vantage point. The practice of self-kindness in minor capacities is also imperative. This might involve dedicating a few moments to an enjoyable activity, such as listening to music or embarking on a brief perambulation, particularly during periods of heightened stress or dejection. It serves as a declaration: I am deserving of moments of tranquility and pleasure, irrespective of my achievements. The ability to articulate no to commitments that overextend you is another manifestation of internal validation. It is an acknowledgement of your boundaries and a reverence for your own energy and time. It is a pronouncement: my well-being holds significance. Finally, celebrating effort, not solely outcomes, is crucial. When engaged in a demanding undertaking, acknowledge the diligent work and unwavering dedication you are investing, even if the ultimate result does not precisely align with your aspirations. This teaches you that your worth is not exclusively contingent upon success, but also upon your commitment and perseverance. These daily practices, consistently implemented, contribute to the gradual construction of a robust internal validation system, rendering you less dependent on the ephemeral approval of others. By actively nurturing these internal resources, our self-awareness, our validation systems, and our core values, we commence the construction of an impregnable inner citadel, a sanctuary of strength impervious to the ebb and flow of external vicissitudes. This internal foundation is not merely for weathering storms, it is for flourishing amidst them, and it prepares us for the subsequent, indispensable phase, the comprehension and judicious application of our inherent capabilities. 5. The journey to self-acceptance. The journey to building a confidence that truly lasts isn't about discovering a hidden incantation or attaining a state of unblemished perfection. It more closely resembles the painstaking process of learning to walk. You falter, you tumble, you rise again, and with each tentative step, your gait grows steadier, your footing more assured. And the initial, paramount stride upon this path is what we term self-acceptance. Now, when the phrase self-acceptance is uttered, your mind might leap to the assumption that it necessitates an immediate, wholesale adoration of every facet of your being. It might conjure images of grand declarations of flawlessness, or perhaps even a compulsion to feign an untarnished existence. But this is a misapprehension and, frankly, a rather insidious trap. Genuine self-acceptance is not about perpetually liking oneself or espousing an illusion of perfection. It is far simpler and yet infinitely more profound. It is the act of acknowledging and embracing the entirety of who you are in this very moment. It is the quiet declaration: this is me. This is my complete self, with my inherent strengths and my acknowledged weaknesses, my past missteps and my present imperfections. And my intrinsic worth as a human being is not subject to negotiation based on any of these. Consider this analogy. Have you ever witnessed a friend err? Perhaps they misspoken, or their endeavor faltered. If you hold that friend in esteem, you do not summarily cast them aside, do you? You do not proclaim them irrevocably flawed. Instead, you might offer a sympathetic ear, a measure of understanding, and perhaps remind them that human fallibility is universal, and that such occurrences do not diminish their inherent value. Self-acceptance is the practice of directing that same benevolence and comprehension inward, toward yourself. It is the recognition that you, too, are a sentient being, and that the human condition is inherently interwoven with its own tapestry of trials and imperfections. It is the steadfast conviction that your inherent worth remains unassailable, irrespective of external circumstances. This is the domain where self-compassion enters, acting as the gentle hand that guides your first, wavering steps toward acceptance. If self-acceptance represents the destination, self-compassion is the chosen route. It is the deliberate cultivation of treating yourself with the same warmth, empathy, and solace you would extend to a cherished companion navigating hardship. When you stumble, rather than succumbing to a barrage of self-recrimination, self-compassion implores you to pause and inquire, what solace would I offer a friend in this predicament? It is the acknowledgement of pain or disappointment without the accretion of further self-inflicted censure. Envision yourself embarking upon the acquisition of a novel skill, such as mastering a musical instrument. You will inevitably strike discordant notes. Your initial attempts will sound unrefined. If you immediately admonish yourself with, "I am utterly inept at this, I shall never achieve proficiency," you will likely abandon the pursuit with haste. However, if you approach it with self-compassion, you might articulate, "This presents a challenge, and it is perfectly acceptable that I have not yet attained mastery. I shall persist in my practice, and I will glean wisdom from each note, even the imperfect ones." This internal discourse, this gentle exhortation, is what empowers you to persevere. It is what enables you to embrace the awkward nascent stages and the inevitable stumbles, understanding that they are integral to the learning continuum. This directly challenges the ephemeral nature of the Sandcastle mentality. When our self-assurance is erected upon the edifice of external validation, the flawless note, the resounding applause, the effusive praise, we become paralyzed by the prospect of a discordant sound, fearing it will precipitate the entire structure's collapse. Self-compassion illuminates the truth that the authentic bedrock of our value resides not in that perfect rendition, but in our unwavering willingness to learn and evolve, to attempt anew. This leads us to the crux of why our reliance on external benchmarks actively undermines our capacity to achieve authentic self-acceptance. When we perpetually seek external validation for our worth, we are, in essence, constructing our confidence upon shifting sands. We may bask in elation following a compliment on our appearance, but what transpires when we awaken to a disheveled visage or a diminished sense of attractiveness? The confidence disintegrates. We might experience a surge of self-assurance when our supervisor lauds our work, but what if a project deviates from its intended trajectory? That innate sense of value, that internal confidence as we are designating it, can vanish. This incessant craving for external affirmation engenders a frenetic dynamism. We are perpetually scanning the horizon for the next morsel of approval, the next signal of our adequacy. The immediate emotional repercussion of this disconnect is a pervasive disquiet. We exist with a low-grade hum of apprehension. Am I sufficiently capable? What are their perceptions of me? Will I be accepted if my vulnerabilities are revealed? This anxiety is profoundly taxing and prevents us from ever truly settling into a stable sense of self. When we are preoccupied with the construction of a sandcastle of external approbation, we neglect the solid ground beneath our feet. Our focus is so intently fixed upon the aesthetically pleasing turrets and ramparts that we fail to perceive the inherent fragility of the foundation. And the more ardently we pursue these external accoutrements, the idealized physique, the prestigious professional title, the coveted online following, the idyllic romantic union, the more we recede from the possibility of accepting ourselves precisely as we are. These elements are transient. They are mutable, and when they inevitably shift, as they are destined to do, the sandcastle dissolves, leaving us feeling exposed and hollow. This encapsulates the central tenet of this discourse. Anchoring ourselves to external factors is akin to building on the shoreline, perpetually vulnerable to the caprice of the tide. True, enduring confidence, this intrinsic self-assurance, is forged upon bedrock, far removed from the reach of the waves. So, how does this internal metamorphosis, this practice of self-compassion, directly dismantle that sandcastle mentality? As you begin to extend kindness to yourself, you commence to loosen the grip of external validation. You apprehend that your worth is not contingent upon the flawless execution of a particular task. It resides in the very act of engagement, of learning, of existence. This paradigm shift empowers you to acknowledge your imperfections without allowing them to define your essence. You can confess an error, not as a cataclysmic failure, but as an invaluable learning opportunity. You can concede a perceived deficiency, not as a source of shame, but as an integral component of your unique human tapestry. The internal transformations that manifest through the practice of self-compassion are transformative. Firstly, there is a quieting of that relentless inner critic. The voice that perpetually enumerates your shortcomings begins to recede, or at the very least, you acquire the faculty to perceive it without allowing it to dictate your self-worth. You begin to experience a profound sense of inner tranquility, a quiet confidence that requires no ostentatious declaration to be recognized. This is not an assertion of arrogance. It is a settled understanding. You develop a greater degree of self-reliance. You trust in your capacity to surmount challenges, not because you are infallible, but because you are assured of your ability to treat yourself with kindness when adversity arises. This embrace of imperfection is not an indication of weakness. Rather, it is a catalyst for extraordinary growth. When we endeavor to conceal our flaws, we expend an inordinate amount of energy merely to keep them buried. We live in fear of discovery, of judgment. But when we can accept our imperfections, we liberate that expended energy. We can exhibit greater candor, profound vulnerability, and an openness to learning. Imagine a garden. If you were to cultivate exclusively pristine, unblemished flora and eradicate anything that deviated from the ideal, you would cultivate a stark and uninspiring landscape. However, a truly magnificent garden embraces the wild blooms, the slightly askew stems, the plants that flourish in unexpected ways. These imperfections imbue it with character, resilience, and a distinctive charm. Our errors, our perceived deficiencies, these are not indicators of inherent brokenness. They are simply constituent elements of the human experience. When we can accept them, we can derive wisdom from them. We can comprehend why we erred, what alternative approaches we might employ in the future, and how we can evolve from the experience. This stands in stark opposition to the sandcastle. A sandcastle is conceived to be perfect, unblemished, and admired, yet it is inherently fragile. When a wave crashes upon it, it vanishes. Embracing imperfection signifies an understanding that our internal confidence is not predicated on the construction of a flawless, impregnable edifice. It is about cultivating a resilient spirit capable of withstanding tempests, learning from adversity, and discovering beauty even amidst imperfect moments. It is the recognition that our inherent value is not inextricably linked to flawlessness, but rather to our very existence and our capacity for growth and connection. So, how does one practically implement this? Self-acceptance is an ongoing endeavor, not a static destination one reaches and permanently inhabits. It is akin to tending a garden. It necessitates consistent attention and diligent care. One of the most potent methods for its cultivation is through mindful self-awareness. This entails observing your thoughts, emotions, and actions in the present moment, devoid of judgment. It is about observing yourself with a spirit of inquiry, much like a scientist meticulously examining a phenomenon. When a thought surfaces, perhaps a critical reflection on your physical appearance, mindfulness enables you to register its presence. Ah, there is that thought about my nose. It is merely a thought. It does not possess the authority of truth. It does not define my intrinsic worth. Rather than immediately assenting to the thought or becoming overwhelmed by the emotion it elicits, you simply observe it. You acknowledge its existence without the imperative to rectify it, contest it, or endorse it. This practice facilitates the creation of a subtle demarcation between yourself and your cognitive processes. You realize that you are not synonymous with your thoughts. You are the conscious observer of them. This mindful observation is instrumental in deconstructing the sandcastle. When you are consciously aware, you can discern the recurring pattern. Whenever I experience a flicker of insecurity, I instinctively seek external validation. I consult my device, I scrutinize my reflection, I solicit a compliment. The recognition of this pattern is the inaugural step toward its dissolution. You can then elect an alternative course of action. Instead of reaching for external reinforcement, you can turn inward with self-compassion. You can acknowledge the insecurity without the perceived necessity of fixing it through external approval. Allow me to recount a brief narrative, a composite of numerous experiences I have both encountered and personally felt. For an extended period, I harbored the conviction that my worth was directly proportional to the degree to which others found me agreeable. If a social engagement proved successful, and individuals appeared to derive pleasure from my company, I experienced elation. I felt invincible. Conversely, if even a single individual exhibited detachment or disinterest, my entire day would be cast into shadow. I would meticulously re-examine conversations, pondering my perceived transgressions, what I might have articulated differently. My self-esteem functioned as a weather vane, perpetually oscillating in response to the opinions of others. I recall one particular evening. I was attending a social function, and I had invested considerable effort in my outward presentation and demeanor. My aspiration was to be the effervescent centerpiece of the gathering, the individual who would be remembered with fondness. For a time, it appeared to be efficacious. Laughter punctuated my jests, and compliments were bestowed upon my attire. I experienced a surge of that familiar, yet ephemeral, confidence. However, later in the evening, I chanced to overhear a pair of individuals conversing, and their dialogue conveyed a sense of exclusivity, as if I existed outside their sphere of connection. Instantly, the sandcastle I had meticulously erected began to erode. A knot formed in my stomach. The laughter now sounded hollow. I spent the remainder of the evening consumed by anxiety and a sense of inadequacy, convinced that I had somehow failed to be sufficiently captivating. I departed feeling dispirited, my confidence utterly shattered, all attributable to a fragment of conversation that likely held minimal significance for anyone else. It required a considerable duration for me to comprehend that I was perpetually engineering my own disappointment. I was constructing my entire sense of self upon the foundation of others' approval, upon my perceived ability to conform to their unspoken expectations. It was an exhausting predicament, and the more I pursued that external validation, the less I apprehended my own inherent value. I was not embracing myself, I was attempting to earn acceptance. The pivotal moment was not an abrupt revelation, but a gradual, dawning awareness. It manifested through a series of subtle occurrences, much like the incremental process of learning to walk. I began to observe the aforementioned pattern, the frantic pursuit of external affirmation. I consciously commenced the practice of pausing whenever those critical thoughts or feelings of inadequacy arose. Instead of immediately attempting to ameliorate them by seeking a compliment or a distraction, I would endeavor to simply coexist with them. Conclusion: the tide invariably advances, does it not? We have journeyed together, you and I, contemplating the exquisite, ephemeral sandcastles we endeavor to construct. Recall the meticulous shaping of turrets, the careful smoothing of walls, the artful adornment with seashells. For a fleeting moment, they stood in perfect, majestic splendor. Yet, we also remember the disquieting descent into dread, the creeping advance of the water, the inexorable moment when the waves would reclaim all, leaving only the sodden imprint of what once was. Such is the precariousness of anchoring our self-assurance to the mutable. Our appearance, our stature, the favor of others, our material possessions, even the transient adulation of anonymous digital voices. These are the shifting sands, and to erect a durable sense of worth upon them is akin to attempting to stem the ocean's might with unprotected hands. It is an exhausting futility. We have all traversed this terrain, have we not? A fleeting buoyancy with the influx of praise, followed by a palpable disintegration when it recedes. It is a dizzying ascent and descent, a mode of existence fundamentally untenable. But what if an alternative path existed? What if, rather than a sandcastle on the shore, we could forge something resolute, impervious to the caprices of circumstance? Herein lies our most profound strength, residing deep within. This is what we have come to define as internal confidence. It is not a pretense of flawlessness nor an averment of perpetual good days. It is the quiet, unwavering assurance that one possesses inherent worth, precisely as one is. Envision the construction of a formidable, unyielding citadel. Imagine a magnificent fortress, its ramparts of unbreachable stone, its foundations sunk into bedrock, far beyond the reach of any Encroaching tide. This citadel is your innermost self. It is not constructed upon the opinions of others, nor upon the transient state of your outward presentation, but upon the immutable core of your being. It is built through the acceptance of your entire self, imperfections and all, through the profound understanding of your unique values, and through the cultivation of self-compassion, particularly when confronted by adversity. This internal citadel remains a constant, a sanctuary of impregnable strength to which one may retreat, regardless of the tempests that rage without. When one commences to inhabit this inner citadel, a profound transformation ensues. A professional setback ceases to be an indictment of personal failure. It becomes merely an obstacle on the path, an opportunity for learning and emergent resilience. The criticisms of others no longer possess the power to shatter one's intrinsic value. They simply become observations that one may choose to engage with or dismiss. Your accomplishments, while indeed commendable, evolve into the decorative embellishments of your citadel rather than the very bedrock of its construction. You will find yourself drawn to more salubrious relationships where individuals appreciate the authentic you rather than a carefully curated facade. A sense of profound peace and liberation will dawn, the freedom to embody your genuine self. This is not an advocacy for emotional stoicism. It is the establishment of a stable anchor, ensuring that when waves of sorrow or doubt surge, they may wash over you without dragging you beneath their depths. You become the master architect of your own spiritual well-being, empowered by the quiet fortitude that has perpetually resided within. The construction of this inner citadel is not a singular endeavor, but rather a lifelong pilgrimage. There will be days when the tide appears to inch closer, when the ingrained habits of seeking external validation attempt to resurface. This is permissible. It is an intrinsic aspect of the unfolding process. Recall the instruments and disciplines we have explored. Continue to tend to your inner ramparts, to reinforce your foundations with the mortar of self-compassion and self-awareness. Persist in nurturing yourself, in body and in spirit. The investment of effort in your internal fortitude will yield a recompense that no external circumstance can ever divest, a profound, enduring confidence that is truly indomitable. The Sandcastle may have imparted invaluable lessons regarding impermanence. Now, it is time to step within your citadel. The solid ground lies beneath your feet, and unwavering strength resides within your heart. Construct it, inhabit it, and permit your authentic, unshakable self to radiate.